Evening you with GB News, our top story. Some breaking news. A man has been charged with the murder of Sarah Henshaw, whose body was found in a lay-by near the M1 yesterday. Derbyshire police are saying the suspect is 36-year-old Darren Hall. Sarah Henshaw's body was discovered just after midnight yesterday, close to junction 29 of the motorway. The 31-year-old mother of two was last seen at her home address in Ilkeston last Tuesday. Her mother has described her as a wonderful daughter and sister. That news just into us in the last half hour. Now, the inquest today into Nicola Bulley's death concluded that the mother of two died from accidental drowning. Senior coroner Dr James Aidley told the inquest Nicola Bulley fell into the cold water and gave no indication of any intention to take her own life. Miss Bulley disappeared in January whilst out walking her dog along the River Wyre. Her body was found 3 weeks later. Lancashire police say they hope the inquiry will put an end to the ill-informed speculation which has been so damaging to Nicky's family. Hospital consultants in England at a walkout next month in a dispute over pay. Members of the British Medical Association voted in favour of strikes on the 20th and 21st of July unless a credible offer is forthcoming. Meanwhile, nurses' strikes have ended after a ballot for further industrial action failed to meet the legal 50% threshold. The Royal College of Nursing said only 43% of members cast their vote. The Health Secretary, though, says he's ready to work again with the RCN going forward.
We reached a deal with the NHS Staff Council that the majority of trade unions agreed to. I'm pleased that the RCN have now ended their industrial action and we stand ready to work in partnership with the NHS Staff Council as a whole, but also with the RCN. There are a number of aspects of our deal with the Agenda for Change unions. We continue to work with them and we stand ready to do so with the RCN.
Now, news away from home. The Belarusian president says the Wagner group of mercenaries and their boss, Yevgeny Prigozhin, is now in Belarus. Alexander Lukashenko had previously offered the mercenary chief a relocation deal to his country, helping to end Saturday's march on Moscow. Wagner troops were told they had three choices. They could either join the Russian army, move to Belarus with their leader, or return to their families. It comes as the Kremlin says Vladimir Putin's position has not been shaken by the attempted mutiny. GB News picked up double Trick Awards today. GB News Breakfast won Multi-Channel News Programme of the Year, beating established news outlet Morning Offerings. And Nigel Farage was awarded News Presenter of the Year, much to the surprise of the seated guests and glittering afternoon ceremony, which took place at the Grosvenor House Hotel in London. Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello, weekend news presenters on the breakfast programme, were evidently delighted at receiving the trophy.
The public, they like what we do, and it feels so nice to be up against stiff competition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like ITV, like BBC, and it's us that steps away with the gong. It feels amazing, doesn't it? It feels
You're
really,
drop
really
that
good.
in a minute.
I just love it. I just want to be like, yeah!
Congratulations to all those on screen and indeed those behind the scenes. This is GB News.
Thank you, Polly, and congratulations to all our colleagues. Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, taking you through Wednesday's best headlines. A man who likes to swear, the aptly named Leo Kearse, and the aptly named Cressida Wetton as well, aptly named because she lives on a boat. There we are. That's taken some of the finest minds in West London. Good 3 or 4 seconds to come up with that. Traditionally, we crowbar in, I'm afraid, a few puns. But we are about to look at the front pages, which are, after all, the natural home of puns. Well, let's see what we've got this evening. We've got 7 days of NHS chaos as senior doctors walk out. That is the Daily Mail. Also, Sarah Vine, how I had my breast roped at number 10. Daily Express, that sounds like a self-help guide, doesn't it? Daily Express, I want to be brutally honest with the public. Nothing to do with groping breasts. He's talking about COVID deaths. The Financial Times, Putin admits Kremlin paid billions to bankroll Wagners, whatever you want to call them, the paramilitaries. I should imagine that carpet cost a fair few quid as well. The Eye, Putin plane flies Russian diplomats home from America. And a little bit of news about the England Test side. The Times, water bills will rise by up to 40% amid crisis. Russian hat sizes rise by similar amounts by the look of it. The Daily Star, pack your wags. That is the advice that dogs need a mental health restoring holiday this summer as well. After the glory years of lockdown, they're finding it rough. So those were your front pages. So we begin with the Daily Express, Leo, and Nick Hancock.
Matt Hancock.
Matt Hancock, not Nick, sorry. God, there's a throwback to the past.
That'd be a twist in the tale of Britain's COVID inquiry.
We think it's all over. It is now.
There's a new variant. Matt Hancock has said that Britain's strategy for pandemics was completely wrong because it did not consider how to stop a new disease. And he said central to pandemic planning needs to be how do you stop the disaster from happening in the first place? How do you suppress the virus? Whereas previously they were just talking about can we buy enough body bags? Where are we going to bury the dead? Stuff like that. I'd have thought when I saw the headline and I saw Matt Hancock admits that the approach to the pandemic was wrong. I thought he was going to say, we made a big mistake locking down. We should have done what Sweden did and kept our economy running and not thrown millions of people into mental health crises and stopped children getting an education. But it's not that at all. He's basically saying we should have more lockdown.
Should have gone the other way.
Yeah.
Because they had various wargaming scenarios, didn't they, that they came up with. And I remember when Boris Johnson famously appeared on Holly and Phil's couch, as it then was still, and, and he looked like he was the bad guy. But I remember him sitting there talking about, what is essentially, like a kind of brace, and that was it. That was the whole of the strategy, right? Just like tough it out.
Which is a very Boris Johnson strategy.
Exactly. He was quite happy with that. And they were like, no, we need vastly more nanny state kind of approach to the whole thing.
It sounds quite similar to the Great Barrington Declaration, doesn't it? I mean, they weren't quite saying tough it out, and they certainly weren't saying let it rip. But same as you, I thought, oh, we're going to finally hear that it was all a bit much. But instead, it sounds more like preparing us for this to happen again, doesn't it? Oh, we should have done it more. Next time we'll do it harder and faster. Like, no, thanks.
I mean, there are certain specific examples of incompetence. I think most people do now accept that the care home strategy was pretty brutal and callous and unnecessary.
Yeah.
But having said that, I don't know how because the implication is you should have kept those people in hospital longer. Well, you can't have your hospitals just full of old people. That's why we have care homes in the first place, because they're never quite well enough to go home, are they? That's the trouble, isn't it? That's the situation.
Although somebody compared the sort of discharging of old people sick with COVID into care homes, it was like the sort of siege tactic of firing diseased bodies over the wall.
Well, or famously when they sent Lenin into Russia, Churchill described him as a plague bacillus.
Right.
The Germans had, he was in Switzerland, Lenin, and they decided they send him in a sealed train to St. Petersburg, knowing that he would trigger the Bolshevik revolution that would force Russia out of the war.
Right,
but Anyway,
it's quite topical
slightly
right
more
now.
Strategic for that, exactly.
There's just a couple of bits of good news for Brexiteers. So apparently Brexit helped regarding medicine procurement.
Oh, this is in the Hancock story?
Yeah. And also, I don't know if the vaccine procurement is, but we previously know that, it helped with vaccine procurement as well, because we weren't, lumped in with this, bureaucratic European process.
Yes, that's assuming that the vaccines were a good thing, of course. But still, at some point, if you cut it off, if you just, isolate it. Next up is The Guardian, Cressida.
Yeah, they're going with Nicola Bulley's story. Turns out her death was accidental. That's the verdict. Died accidentally from drowning, coroner rules. So Lancashire coroner records verdict of accidental death and finds mortgage broker died shortly after falling in the river. So this is, I guess, some relief to the... Well, not relief, some comfort to the family. The idea that it was suicide has now been put to bed. There's a lot of discussion about the Lancashire police. At the time, they were suggesting she might have been drunk.
Yeah.
That's now been put to bed as well. She wasn't.
There was,
no
I mean, I don't know, you say that's put to bed, but actually that wasn't so much a stain on her character. It was much more considered to be a problem with the police communications department right away, wasn't it?
Yeah,
essentially, and that isn't necessarily put to bed, right?
Because the police were being criticised for their handling of the case and the investigation, so they almost released that as released personal information about her history surgery and, struggles with the menopause and alcohol and stuff, which, turned out to not be relevant whatsoever. They released that to sort of, distract from their own poor handling of the case.
I might be misremembering it. I seem to remember a photograph came out which, like, certain kind of people that exist in the world, obviously, on social media, but analysing to see signs of sort of marital abuse and that sort of thing. It became extraordinarily toxic as a conversation.
And there were a lot of sort of DIY detectives and pundits going to the site.
Sort of domestic Bellingcat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrific, but this is the world we live in now, isn't it? This is Black Mirror territory, of course. Well, I hope people accept that verdict. I mean, it's so hard to accept, isn't it, whether it's just a housewife and mother or it's the President of the United States, when you kind of go, when people die unexpectedly, you just kind of go, there must be more to it, but not always. Absolutely. Next up is the Eye, Leo.
So the Eye has Putin's plane flies Russian diplomats home from America. So a Russian government plane, one of the few that hasn't been shot down by Wagner, is flown to Washington, D.C. to ferry these key diplomats back to Moscow amid rising tensions with the West. I mean, can the tensions get any higher? How high can tensions go? But it forms part of Vladimir Putin's special flight squadron, his presidential fleet that were used a few days ago to evacuate all, Putin and all his government from...
It was his 9/11, wasn't it? He was like kind of jumped on the plane to get out of there.
Yeah. He did the opposite of what Zelensky did. Zelensky, Kyiv was expected to fall and Zelensky would be executed, and Zelensky stayed. So Putin, showed his weakness by fleeing. But this means that, these diplomats that are going to Russia, they'll take intelligence with them, apparently. I don't know. I mean, it says that here. I don't know if people have got WhatsApp. They can probably send it over that.
Well, it's true. I mean, you do wonder how necessary these, channels are in an era where we can all send encrypted messages to one another. Putin's... I mean, this isn't directly related to this story, but I do find it sort of got, alluded to there. Putin had projected himself to be such an extraordinary strongman, like a literal physical strongman for so many years. Those famous photographs of him riding around bare-chested on horseback and angling in the great Russian wilderness and what have you, He looks kind of physically weak and exhausted now, doesn't he? He looks weird. And I wouldn't necessarily raise that in the case of every foreign leader, even one that had started a war. But I feel like that is a serious issue for him.
I think in Russia, they want a strong guy, don't they?
Exactly.
No, absolutely. I think when we look at it through our eyes, and if you compare him to Rishi Sunak, we've just got different priorities, haven't we? We're not looking for...
But when you see, is it Prigozhin? I can remember the name. When you see him, he's not an attractive figure, but you do see in that the kind of Khrushchev kind of...
radiates menace. He's got the whole thing is like...
It's like imagine he'd have a collar on.
It's like the Sopranos on steroids. It's amazing. But so Prigozhin and Wagner, those troops, they're going to Belarus and apparently have been building the camps. It's actually going to happen. But then you've got to wonder: is Wagner going to take over Belarus? Do a coup on Minsk? Is Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, going to instead take over Moscow?
Is that going to be a new? Some people are saying Lukashenko and Wagner could become a new kind of fighting unit
because they're actual real troops that have been in battle for a long time, so they're hardened troops, so they could just fold any National Guard in half.
It's very interesting, as most people seem to have switched now from a kind of traditional statesman, politician model to an organised crime model. The only way to understand Russia is not to look at any other kind of politics, it's to read up about Lucky Luciano and,
I thought that 80% of Prigozhin's guys have come straight out of prison. He's rescued them from, like, a 20-year prison sentence. They're quite loyal and quite scary guys, I think.
And there's a lot of special forces and Russian military that have, got a lot of experience, and then they're going to Wagner to earn a lot more money.
Yeah. Well, we can't complain. Britain had its mercenary years as well. We finished this section with the Daily Star, Cressida.
Pack your wags. Expert warns, I don't know who the expert is, warns that 99% of dogs...
Almost certainly my mother-in-law.
Oh, really?
Yeah, massive dog fan.
99% of dogs need a holiday to improve mental health. Isn't that fascinating? I'm a big dog person. I used to work in doggy daycare.
OK.
But I think dogs like routine, don't they?
Yeah.
Dogs famously don't like strange things. So I feel like this is a lot of human projection.
Well, they certainly don't... the photograph there, obviously intended meant to be amusing, but it's got sunglasses on and it's on the beach. That certainly dogs don't like. They don't like it to be really hot. They don't like to be somewhere where they're, where they're confused by the... But what they do like is they like the family around them. I did notice during lockdown our dog was insanely happy and he's never been quite the same since. So I do kind of get that, If you are going to have a holiday... I do think if you have a dog, you have to basically give up foreign holidays for 12 years or so,
much.
and take them with you. But once you get there, nothing too weird. I don't know what I'm implying there. That is it for part one. Join us in part two for Jeffrey Epstein, Nigel Farage and the crackdown on revenge porn. Hopefully those are three separate stories. We'll have to wait and see in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm your host, Simon Evans. I'm joined by fully licensed comedians Leo Kearse, Cressida Wetton. So, Leo, we kick off with media news now in the Metro, and our very own Nigel Farage has received both an award and a barrage of heckling, one of which he's familiar with, at least.
Yeah, they tried to barrage the Farage. So Nigel Farage booed and heckled as he picks up News Presenter of the Year award. I was actually in the room, and the way the Metro talk about it, obviously the Metro have got their own bias, their own angles, but you'd think the whole room was booing him. There was a few sporadic boos, and a few people shouted shout some unpleasant things, but it wasn't anywhere. I think people can see that the tide is turning. These awards, the awards that
Was
the
it
award that
Nish
you won.
Kumar level of heckling?
No way.
No,
He's nowhere near as unpopular or as unfunny as Nish Kumar. But these awards are voted for by the people. So the people who are booing were booing the British public, which is, it's disgusting. It's anti-democratic. It shows exactly how out of touch these people are.
But he did make an interesting point, which was not something I was aware of. He used the opportunity up there to criticise the means by which media figures are, not media figures like him, like statistics are gathered. And that was quite interesting.
Yeah, so he was giving some advice, really, wasn't he? Guys, you might want to take note of this. But they didn't like that.
What is it with they have only a handful of households who are actually monitored?
So apparently there's something like 7,000 households, or it's a certain number, not a huge number, have this Barb set-top box that records every, all the linear TV viewing, so, BBC One, all the rest of it. And he was criticising that. But the thing about that is we've started to do really well in the Barb viewing figures, so maybe it's not the right time to
I like the way they're
them.
called barbed anyway. Is there a suggestion that they're a bit like snarky?
Or just a woman with a beehive haircut and sitting there.
Cressida, over to The Guardian now, an early entry for this year's International Comedy Awards from the US Justice Department. That's my own view, obviously.
Nice. Jeffrey Epstein's suicide blamed on jail's negligence and misconduct.
Absolutely.
So a scathing report published on Tuesday by the Justice Department Inspector General said widespread disregard of Bureau of Prisons policies and procedures led to a surplus of bed linens left in the cell.
A surplus of nooses.
If he'd only
had... surplus of sharp objects.
A step-by-step diagram and two burly men there to help you get your head in it.
I mean, there's one great bit. They say, they should have... there was supposed to be a protocol where he'd share the cell with another
Yes,
prisoner.
he didn't have a cellmate. Somebody left and they didn't find him a new roommate. So
I mean, that was so basic. I mean, that is so... he was like literally the most famous prisoner, the most notorious, the most important one that they bring to court. And they remove his cellmate against the... I mean, why even remove that one?
And all the security cameras didn't work and the guards weren't looking.
They were asleep. They spent 3 hours asleep. They were supposed to check in every half an hour. He was found, apparently, there are no photographs of this because they removed him, which is against the protocols. He was found hanged by a bedsheet from his top bunk, which is like about 6 foot high. He is a 6 foot man. He was found kneeling. He was supposedly hanged himself. He was in a kneeling position. I mean, it's absurd.
I mean,
and there were photographs of bottles and toiletries standing upright still on the bunks, from which apparently he fell with sufficient force to snap his neck.
Wow, you sound like a conspiracy theorist.
It's insane. I'm not. There's conspiracy theory, and then there's just rudeness. I mean, it's just plain insulting. Isn't
But you're not suggesting.
Do you know what I mean?
You're suggesting this was deliberate negligence, not that somebody.
I'm suggesting he was killed. I'm suggesting he was killed.
But Simon, according to this, the authorities have concluded that the authorities didn't kill him.
Yeah, amazing.
So surely, if they knew he'd already had a suicide attempt the night before, so they knew his. Assuming that's true, Simon.
Well, I don't know if that is.
They knew his state of mind, and then
the last time he spoke to his legal team, they said he was very cheerful and I mean, you might say they have an agenda as well, but they're not able to get anything, get anywhere with it. They said he was far from. He had a petition for bail. Yes, quite conceivable if a man used to being cock of the walk was to be given a life sentence. You might think at some point sod this. But
I looked at the photo of the cell and that's exactly what I thought. Yeah. No, thanks.
But I mean, he was basically a billionaire. He evaded similar charges, and he could have cut a deal with the names he knew. He could have thrown every mover and shaker in US politics under the bus and cut a deal, and obviously they didn't want that to happen. So you see people in Russia falling from windows. I don't know. I feel
there's a podcast
ridiculous.
Highly recommended called Martyr Made. Martyr as in a martyrdom. MARTYRMADE. I don't know why his real name is Daryl Cooper, I think. Anyway, he recorded a very interesting, detailed 3-part podcast about this issue. And if anyone is interested in at least being aware of all the mountain of circumstantial evidence alone, but there we are, very interesting. and it leads who knows where. I do. Well, from one case of highly assisted dying to the broader case for reform in The Guardian, Leo.
So Dignitas has helped 540 British people die, MPs have been told, and yet my mother lives on. No, if she's watching, that's just a little joke, Mum. But yeah, the assisted dying organisation Dignitas, which is a euthanasia organisation based in Switzerland, it's basically if Harold Shipman was made into some sort of official corporation.
Yeah.
But they're saying it's about time to legalise the practice in the UK and make it available alongside palliative care. But I mean, this seems to be the trend in Western countries to make assisted suicide more accessible, not just to Jeffrey Epstein, but to other people who want it. And I understand there's a case to be made for people who are desperate and in pain and at the end of their lives. But for some people, I mean, in Canada, where they've just leapt ahead with this, there was a mother, I mean, at any age, it's not just old people, with just like mental health issues, so not any severe chronic
or even
ongoing
poverty at some occasions.
Poverty sometimes, homeless people, or people who can't afford their bills.
If men have, apparently this is quite common in men. I'm reading The Boy Crisis at the moment. Can you tell? If a man is worth a lot in life insurance, the chance of suicide goes through the roof. And of course, he wants to hide it because he wouldn't be worth anything if it was.
It's a Wonderful Life. It's the plot,
right?
Yeah. And we haven't all got an angel to come down and save us. What about the? I mean, some people say this is the slippery slope, the fallacy. They say, you can make legislation. You just say it needs to be end of blah blah blah. But it does feel like it creeps one step at a time, doesn't it? You get a little bit closer. Well, on the other hand, I will say this. I do think, in an ideal world, you would make it available to, if you could eliminate the possibility that it would start to be rolled out on a kind of more casual basis. Not just because some people experience extraordinary pain and discomfort and misery and despair, but also the vast sort of movement in medical care over the last few years has been towards extending the end of life. This is not something new we'd be bringing in.
Yeah.
This would be a correction towards a kind of a version of life which didn't exist at all a generation ago, So you're only kind of going, but if you don't want that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I follow your point.
Yeah, but in Canada, there was a mother who she only just found by accident that her son had signed up for medically assisted suicide, and he's like 21 years old. All he's got wrong with him is diabetes and depression. But if you're 21, you're gonna have some depression or whatever.
You just need to have a pact with a couple of mates, don't you? Basically. Yeah. We'll go for a long hike when the time comes. Metro now, Cressida, revenge porn crackdown, which, if nothing else, seems an unfortunate phrase.
Huge leap forward in revenge porn crackdown. So there's going to be amendments to the online safety bill, which will make the sharing of intimate images without consent a base offence with a 6-month prison term. That could rise to 2 years if intent to cause distress, alarm or humiliation can be proved, which I guess is a difficult grey area. So it sounds good at first, doesn't it? But, I mean, surely the best defence against revenge porn is when he says, I promise I won't say anything or show anybody, don't send the image.
Do you think part of it is, again, not entirely my world, but quite a few of our A-list superstars got their big start with what amounted to revenge porn, didn't they?
Yeah.
Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Some people probably have a tiny little glimmer of hope that might be their way out.
So you're saying this is a good thing?
It's like the Brazilian kids in the favela, a few knocky keepy-uppy skills, and before you know it,
don't send men
I agree
pictures.
with you.
I think it's mad. And it's this typical thing, isn't it, in the modern world? It's all like, let's try and protect. It's like, no, just don't let it happen in the first place. Don't
put your face in it.
Perfect, Don't wish the world was safer. Actually make yourself safer. And then there's the online safety bill issue, which I know you've spoken about before. It's creeping, isn't it, into saying we know best. Let us police this for you.
But some of this is like they're even going to make deep fakes illegal. So if you create a deep fake of a celebrity or somebody that's going to be illegal. But how is that even enforceable? It's nothing to do. It's like drawing a picture of that person. How can that be?
It's going to be very difficult, isn't it, to trace who's produced these things?
Yeah.
Certainly, I mean, that's what they're afraid of, isn't it? Which I suppose is why they will probably make the sentence extraordinarily harsh, because in that way it's always that balance. So the harder it is to detect something, the more you have to make the fear of it which will be draconian. Anyway, Daily Mail now, Leo, to finish off this section. Ponky bomb makers Lush do indeed appear to have had a skinful.
So cosmetics giant Lush is facing calls for a boycott as it's accused of encouraging people smuggling with the new All Refugees Are Welcome poster featuring an image of a small boat, the exact same sort of inflatable small boat that they used to cross. There it is. And it says, wherever you're from, however you got here, whatever your reasons are, basically it's saying all refugees are welcome. I mean, not specifically in the shop. They definitely don't want them in the shop, but they're welcome in the country. Somebody else can take the burden, but they can get all the virtue signalling points of saying, please come here. And then the taxpayer can foot the bill. I mean, this is ridiculous. And also, it's incredibly poor taste, considering, people die crossing the Channel and crossing the Mediterranean. And also, some people exploit the asylum system to come here and commit terrorist atrocities, like the Manchester Arena bomber, for example, who was rescued from Libya by the Royal Navy.
It's interesting, isn't it, how, I remember the Body Shop when it first launched was explicitly political, but it seemed like most of it was like things you couldn't really argue with. You might find it tiresome, but it was like, let's save the rainforest or whatever, let's save this tribe from extinction.
Not something that half the country was...
Exactly, not something that's absolutely the most controversial issue, the most divisive thing. They're basically saying to half the people walking past their shop, we don't give a stuff about your politics or about your legitimate concerns. I find it extraordinary where we've got to now. This is like a high street teenage girl, stinkathon.
They do stink. It's so sad because they've got the answer. If they put their products in the Channel, the whole thing would be over.
Exactly. And all the refugees would arrive nice and...
If you can get to the UK through the smell of Lush products, I say that's a good filter. You're welcome.
That's it for part 2. Coming up, the waning of the Markle star. We have lashes of ashes and woke nonsense on the high seas, or at least our coastal waters. We'll catch you in a couple of minutes.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
And welcome back to Headliners. So, Cressida, we have show business news now, no doubt. The raw podcasting talent represented by Meghan Markle is coming into question.
Meghan Markle labelled not a great talent by top Hollywood agent after Spotify deal ends. So Jeremy Zimmer, the chief executive officer of United Talent Agency, has come out with these really catty remarks. He hasn't just let it. He's not going down without a catty...
He didn't broker the deal or anything.
I don't think so. No. Well, I don't know. I haven't. I'll be honest. I'm not a great Meghan Markle fan. I haven't been listening to all the episodes.
Archetypes.
Archetypes. That's it. He says, turns out Meghan Markle was not a great audio talent or necessarily any kind of talent.
Ooh. Yeah.
Oh no, he didn't. It's just so unnecessary, isn't it? And lots of people are criticising him. And he said, just because you're famous doesn't make you great at something. Which is
I think
amazing.
he's making a valid wider point. I mean, you could say whether or not he should kick her while she's down, but she did somehow manage to con 20 million out of Spotify, 100 million out of Netflix.
Yes,
They were
and
supposed
she was
to provide
hilarious
a whole
in South Park.
raft of, yeah, that was true. They got their money's worth there.
Well, yeah, in fact, a Spotify executive, Bill Simmons, criticised the pair, branding them effing grifters.
Yeah.
So,
which is the show I would watch. I mean, absolutely, you know, beetling about on little chopper bikes.
A lot of people are slamming them. Tim Dillon, the comedian, said he was at a Hollywood party and everybody was getting their phones out to compare cringy messages they'd received from Meghan Markle, trying to inveigle her way into projects and things.
I mean, I saw the list of the women she had on. I don't know why she called it archetypes. She was supposed to be talking about stereotypes, was what she meant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The word archetypes is not a synonym for stereotypes. It's not a bad thing, archetypes. It's like a useful way of talking about drama and literature and stuff.
Yeah, that's like Camille Parlier's sexual personas, like archetypes.
Exactly,
not people misunderstanding.
Her son is called Archie, and she's a moron. So that's why...
Look, she's not a moron, she's lazy. Apparently, she was surprised by the work required to finish entertainment projects.
Yeah.
So
we've all done that. I'll write a new Edinburgh show. Oh, my God. What have I done? That's true, though, isn't it? You get a series commission on the radio and think, oh, no.
Yeah, never for $20 million, though.
No, exactly. I would be... Imagine how many times you could hire Dan Evans for $20 million. Telegraph now, Leo, and the BBC are refusing to gender the ashes, which, to be fair, is one of the trickier jobs in the crematorium.
So, BBC Ashes coverage is confusing listeners with gender-neutral titles. So, there's the women's Ashes and there's the men's Ashes, but the BBC just refer to both of them as the Ashes.
Yeah.
So, listeners don't know if they mean the one that's played by women or the one that's played by men.
They call them the fashes and the mashes. That would work, wouldn't
Well,
it?
Simon, I've come up with a couple of answers for this.
Yeah.
You could either, if you replace the H with another S, that's one option.
Okay.
Or you can you can just add a G on the beginning and then...
Oh, that's quite
I mean, you
rude.
could, couldn't you?
I didn't see you going there. OK. I quite like fash, because it's slang for fascism, isn't it? But that goes to the women, so that's quite a nice twist.
Yeah.
I do think they are utterly deluded, you know, personally. I think the vast majority of people who watch cricket on a regular basis want to see them. They're quite happy that the women are enjoying themselves, let's be honest, you know. Nobody denies them their pleasure, but one of these tournaments is arguably the most venerable in the world of sport, let alone cricket, over 100 years. And the other is a relatively recent development, you know, to accord them the same amount of importance by kind of linguistics. It's Orwellian, isn't it?
So you'd say call it the women's Ashes, and then the Ashes is the men's one. So not the men's Ashes.
No, not the men's Ashes, the Ashes.
Right.
And then I wouldn't call it the women's Ashes, because no cricket bales have been burnt and placed in a small urn and kept for posterity in a glass case. There is a meaning to that.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got to earn it. You haven't
no
yet.
idea.
You haven't let your country down yet, as much as those English cricket players did in 1886 or whenever it was. Anyway, we have the Telegraph now, Cressida, and kids are getting more confused about they're getting more confused about gender younger. Sorry, they refuse to grow up so fast these days, don't they?
Gender dysphoria emerging 5 years sooner than in 2017. So the average has changed. The mean average used to be 31 and a half years old, and now it's come down to 26 and a quarter years old.
Really? So they're not. These are not kids. These are adults.
No, that's the mean average. Because traditionally, it was boys between the ages of 4 and 7 who then later went on to be gay adults. And middle-aged men, and so that was the average. But what you're getting now is this surge of girls, sort of 11 to late teens.
Yeah. But we're not talking about prepubescent kids.
Well, yeah, it is. In 2021, there were more 13-year-old children than... so the peak has sort of shifted. It used to be older, now it's shifted younger. And also, as Cresta says, it's more girls doing it as it becomes this sort of social contagion.
Social contagion, but it does seem... I mean, it's a bit like smoking, isn't it? It happens at a crucial point, usually around puberty, usually when the hormones are disruptive and turbulent, and you become much more prey to... I don't know, existential crises of one kind or another.
Yeah, and it's also, some statistics are showing that it's replacing anorexia and bulimia as certainly in Google search trends. It's, anorexia and bulimia have come right down, and transitioning has come right up. So it's a way of teenage girls to sort of control their bodies and desexualise their bodies.
It's basically trying to slam the brakes on, isn't it, in that respect?
Yeah, and also the thing with smoking, that's a great analogy, because smoking, I remember at school, people thought you were cool if you smoked, and now everybody thinks, it's the cool thing to do. I mean, it won't be in 10 years' time. No. But, it's not like mullets or double denim. You can't grow out a gender transition.
Well, perhaps it is a bit like smoking in that respect, but even harder to give up. Yeah. Lifeboat news now in the Express, Leo. It sounds like sea isn't the only thing they're sick of.
So, racist language at the RNLI, that's the lifeboat... I don't know what the rest of the letters stand for.
Royal National Lifeboat Identity Politics Organisation.
So the Sea Rescue Charity, let's call them that. They've ordered a full-scale cultural review after staff have been ordered to attend diversity and inclusivity training to stamp out bias against women and ethnic minorities. So they're going to get the lifeboats are now going to be crewed by one-legged Guatemalan lesbians, which is going to be great if you want to be pulled from the sea in a storm. You know what I mean?
It does remind me, unavoidably, of the thing that went around after the submarine imploded, saying that they had avoided hiring boring 50-year-old white men because they weren't very inspirational, and instead they wanted to have a more diverse crew.
Well, also, this ignores the function of teasing, doesn't it? And lads.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should be racist, but the reason they bully each other to some extent is because you're proving who's a tough guy, and we want tough guys in the RNLI.
And it is a bonding mechanism.
Right.
I was never even that good at it or comfortable with it myself in the dressing rooms, but I recognised what was going on. If you could hold your own, you've got some respect.
That's sort of baiting.
And I feel like if you're the unusual, anomalous woman that wants to do this kind of stuff, and I realise they exist, maybe you wouldn't be complaining about some banter. It depends how far it goes, I get that, but...
Just get your own mug with a topless bloke on it, and bang, you're sorted. It
wouldn't
doesn't
that be a
amount
great
to that,
response?
really.
Totally.
That's the thing. So some people were fired for having a mug with, a topless woman on it.
Girl,
it's like, come on. These are blokes who are risking their lives to go into the sea and save people's lives.
Yeah.
They're going to be some of them are going to be the kind of guys who have a mug with some boobs on.
Possibly even a problematic tattoo.
Yeah, maybe one of those pens that you turn it upside down and the bikini comes off.
A whole pack of cards.
Yeah.
That's all for part 3. In the final section, we got proto-pizzas, fully juiced up athletes, finally, and a story about artisan leakers, which is less distressing than it sounds. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners for our final section. Leo, we kick off with the Metro. And does this Pompeii painting suggest discovery of the proto-pizza, the pizza precursor, Pizza Lapithecus?
So, this is in the Metro. It's a 2,000-year-old painting that could be the clue to the world's first pizza. It's a painting of a Domino's flyer advertising a 2-for-1 deal. No, it's not. It says here, Italians are known for their love of pizza. This is groundbreaking stuff from the Metro here.
Yeah.
I was not aware that Italians enjoyed pizza. Yeah, this is... so
it's a nice painting, isn't it? Can we just say? For 2,000 years ago, it is quite nicely done.
It kind of looks like a mouldy cupboard. Like you open a cupboard in a dead person's house.
It looks like it's got an egg on the pizza. They do that in Australia, don't they? They put an egg on top of the pizza.
No, apparently
no,
it's
they
not
didn't have mozzarella.
No,
According
and
to
certainly
this,
no tomatoes either.
No.
So the main two ingredients that separate pizza from...
Yeah, it's a bit of bread. They've discovered bread.
It's an open sandwich.
Yeah.
But still, I think pizza was a New York invention, wasn't it? Isn't that the myth? I think it was like the
I think you're going to get some angry emails from
Italians Italian immigrants in New York, I think. Might not have been. I don't know. Maybe it was like that.
Well, Scottish people perfected it. So we worked out that you could dip it in batter and fry it. So.
I had one day. I had like pizzas. I remember going to Pompeii and Naples and stuff. They have those ones that are just like very basic. Do you know what I mean? It's but have a kind of bit of herb and spice in them or whatever.
And the crust is so delicious that
and it's next to the sea, and you've had quite a lot of wine, and you're not at work.
Exactly, but they don't fill the crust, and they don't have like 18 types of salami or anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it looked nice, and I feel sorry for the poor people of Pompeii. They didn't get the credit they deserve. Cressida. Mirror now, one of the country's most popular pub debates looks likely to be finally settled.
Enhanced games to allow drug taking and has support of athletes and doctors. This blows my mind. The idea is they're going to have the Olympic Games type stuff, but you're allowed all the drugs you want. There's nothing. I mean, I assume they only mean
not
legal.
Not on a buffet, like before you go on, but like, you can have that as part of your training.
Well, instead of grabbing a look as you run past, you can just...
I mean, they haven't mentioned whether they're legal or not. I assume they mean things that are legal. The idea comes from London-based businessman Aaron D'Souza, who's grown sick and tired of the current system of elite sport and wants to shake up the market.
But I can understand this, because there's two reasons. I mean, and he's also said there will be obviously awards for winners, but especially for record breakers, because that's what he's interested. He thinks that if you were juiced enough, you could probably do a 9-second 100-metre dash. Which, I mean, come on, you want to see that. We all want to know if that's possible.
But aren't drugs illegal? I mean, you can't have
steroids aren't illegal. Steroids are like banned substances if you want to compete in sport, but you won't be sent to jail for using them. Generally, I don't know exactly what the rules are, but they're not like cocaine.
Yeah.
Human growth hormone and testosterone-based steroids can make your body... I mean, like weightlifters now, bodybuilders, there are basically two separate categories. I don't think they call it juiced up and that.
Yeah, they do natty.
Essentially,
Call it for natural.
Yeah,
and
so
you can tell because they don't have big muscles. No, they don't have the whatever these ones are.
Oh, that's right. Is it the delts,
ones.
are they, or whatever?
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, no, they are absurd what these people
Well, it sounds entirely reasonable to damage people's health, because he says that instead of running the 100 metres in 9.58 seconds, you could do it in less than 9 seconds.
I would love to see that. And the other thing is, you know, it would eliminate all of that whispering, you know, because whenever somebody does, like, break a record now, it immediately starts, doesn't it? You know, I think, I don't know, why not? It's got to be your choice, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be like watching the Russians at the Olympics in the 80s.
Exactly. The East Germans.
The women with the full
beards. They still have all those records.
they were way ahead with that puberty blockers and gender transition drugs.
Those were the years, and that's all been forgotten, hasn't it? That's all been basically memory hold, all of those years. East Germany was like number 2 in the record, in the results tables. Anyway, I think it would be very interesting. And also, you know, in a country where we allow people to destroy their health by overeating or drinking too much alcohol or smoking, I don't know that we can afford to wag our finger at somebody and say, you know, you shouldn't do that to yourself.
Well, Body positivity Olympics.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Olympics where everybody overeats.
Well, they have that, don't they? Eating contests, hot dog eating. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but they don't run 100 metres afterwards.
Could do.
Yeah.
That would be it. How far can you run? Times now, Leo. Sweeping reforms in counting see Korea adopting Western standards of age. This feels like colonialism.
Yeah, so South Koreans are going to become a year, and in some cases 2 years younger after they reform the system known as Korean age, by which people are reckoned to be significantly older than the length of time that they have been alive. I had a similar thing. I had a thing called a Tinder age when I was single, where I was 5 years younger than I actually am. But in Korea, you're a baby when it's born is 1 year old at the moment of birth and gains another year every New Year's Day. So if you're born, you know, in December, you're suddenly 2 when you're only a week old.
Because they think, first of all, they think the 9 months you spend in the womb is essentially a year.
Yeah.
They round that up.
They just round it up. They include the twinkle in the eye.
Yeah, exactly. That's very nice, the twinkle in the eye. And then secondly, they do it from January 1st. So you're all babies, essentially. This is the bit that doesn't get mentioned. All babies... Their birthday is officially the 1st of January, right?
Well, they don't
that's kind of weird.
It's going to be bad for a bouncy castle hire.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all on one day.
Can you come to my birthday party? Well, that's a bit tricky. I suppose they have a workaround for it.
Well, I guess they just don't... They don't celebrate individual stuff, do they, in Korea? Is that right? Or is that just North Korea?
This is South Korea, isn't it? It's a very individualistic
Maybe it's
place.
different, OK.
In fact, they have virtually no babies either. They have less than 1%.
One of the lowest fertility rates in the world.
Yeah. But I think racehorses do that, don't they? Racehorses are officially born on the 1st of January, I think.
Right.
So, you know, and it doesn't do them any harm, does it? Relationship news now, Cressida, and a woman has noticed that her husband's salary fails to match the fantasy version of him that she thought she'd married.
Woman lambasted after moaning about husband's salary. This story takes place on Mumsnet.
Yeah.
So it's fantastic. On Mumsnet, Am I Being Unreasonable? One of their threads. The poster described her husband as well qualified And he told her at the beginning of the relationship that he was going to get such and such a job, and then he'd earn so much by whatever stage. It does sound like she's projected what she would like. Some time has gone by, this hasn't happened, and she's upset about it. And some people are telling her she's wrong. It sounds like she's just married the wrong bloke, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds like he's married the wrong woman. Oh my God, she's like a vulture.
He's earning 40 grand a year. It's not terrible, but maybe he did give her the impression that he had a lot of ambition. I will say one thing, it doesn't sound like they got kids, so you can't be sure, but there is definitely a testosterone drop in domesticated men. And testosterone is what you need to have, like, over, ridiculous levels of ambition and risk-taking.
Right.
So there is, and on the other hand, of course, you desperately want to get out of the house and stuff, so there's, it weighs up a little bit, but it can, it's been shown to have an evolutionary adaptive effect. You become less masculine in the house, because otherwise you would be unfaithful or whatever. There are all sorts of things that a man would do if his hormones didn't adapt. So she might have not accounted for that. She should probably be buying some boxing gloves and a few training.
And she should get a job. She should get a job instead of trying to claw money out of her poor husband. And he should leave her. Run for the hills. This is the biggest red flag I've ever seen. This is a bigger red flag than the entire Chinese army.
We've got 30 seconds to do bakery news, Leo, and a Dorset baker has been making holy bread. Explain.
So this head baker has been fired. Well, he's been fired and then awarded more than 15 grand for being fired because he was making loaves with too many holes in them. And he said it's an art and not a science. No, bread making is a science. You've got to have everything weighed perfectly. And the reason there's holes is because he's leaving it to rise too long. So you get those big holes. So he does. I know how to bake bread better than he does.
I like the idea of holy bread, though. That sounds like a...
religious thing.
Yeah, the cracker. The show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. No sign of artisan bread on any of them. The Daily Mail has 7 days of NHS chaos as senior doctors walk out. The Daily Express, I want to be brutally honest with the public. That's Matt, not Nick Hancock. The Financial Times, Putin admits Kremlin paid billions to bankroll Wagner's paramilitaries. The Eye, Putin plane flies Russian diplomats home from America. The Times, water bills will rise by up to 40% amid crises. And the Daily Star, pack your wags, take dogs on holiday with you. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Leo Kirst and Cressida Wetton. We're back tomorrow at the same time. I'll be joined by Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. If you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, good night.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain.